First up, Travis. Welcome, Travis.
Hello, everyone. For those of you I don't know, I'm Travis. Thanks, John, for having me speak. I really like gear, so if I start to ramble, you're welcome to just cut me off at some point. So, so I want to get an idea of the room that we have here. So if you could raise your hand, just raise one hand if you shoot on Sony or if have shot on Sony. Okay, and then raise your other hand if that is mirrorless. So raise both hands if both. Okay, cool. So Barrett, the people not raising their hands, those are the ones you need to talk to tonight. So
you've heard of the Chicago way, right? Kind of work a gun, more than just kind of work gets accomplished. There you go.
Except for us, we're going to have pizza and beer across the street afterwards, so you'll get more, the old saying.
So a little lubrication helps open up the wallet. Yes. Well, I bring a portable scanner, okay? Got you guys.
That's right. Cool. So it looks like about half. So basically what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to run you through the settings I use for my Sony camera. So so I mostly shoot on the mirrorless stuff, but I've noticed with that big gun right there, some of the settings are similar, and then hopefully even if you don't shoot on Sony, you can maybe learn a few things just from the way I set up. I do a little bit of commercial work where we can kind of really take our time, get ready and stuff, but a lot of what I do is films, wedding films, and so we have to be kind of run and gun, and we have to have our settings set a certain way where we can just be quick and efficient. So what we're going to do is we are going to hook up my camera here, and I'm just going to kind of run you through what buttons I have set and why. And then after I'm done going through this, I actually have one of our wedding films, not the whole thing, but a couple minutes from it, and I put some title overlays, kind of saying what camera was shooting, what lens we were using, what frame rate we're in, just so you can kind of see it all come together and why we shoot the way we do. So give me 1 second here. So this is the A7iii. Like I was saying, we also have an A7S2 that we use. We have an A6500, and then we have a traditional camcorder X100. I've been with Sony since before they even did mirrorless. I actually brought my little antique. Barrett, I don't even know. Do you know what this is, Barrett?
An A-mount camera.
It is. Do you know which one?
I'm going to guess A300?
Yep, A33. Close. So, so I started, this is my first real DSLR. Things have changed a lot. This camera didn't even have full manual control for video. You could do it for photo, but not for video. Overheated after 40 minutes, no focus peaking, couldn't punch in. Autofocus was not anywhere close to what you'd want to use. So it's changed a lot now that they're in mirrorless and everything. But what's nice is the system didn't change too much. So as things progressed and I started adopting the mirrorless system, a lot of the things were still the same, and they just kept adding more features. So I'm going to run through this. These aren't necessarily the best settings. These are just what's best for us. Like I was saying, we do a lot of wedding films, so we want to be efficient and we want to be quick. So the way I have my buttons set up are for that kind of shooting. If I was doing a little bit more stationary type shooting, I would maybe do a little bit different button setup. But this is what I do for wedding films. I'm going to mostly focus on video. There's one feature I'm going to talk about that's only in the photo mode that I think is beneficial for filmmakers. But since this is a video group, I'm going to focus on why I have it set up for video. So I'm going to start with the shutter and just all the wheels in general. So with the Sony cameras, they basically, with the A7iii at least, they have 3 wheels. I know the smaller cameras like the A6500, you only get 2 wheels, so you have to kind of double up on things. So just the way my brain is trained, I've always had shutter set to the front one right here, and I think we're in a high frame rate, so I can't go any lower. But I've always had shutter on the front. I've had my f-stop on the back. And then I put my ISO on this wheel right here. And the reason why I do that is they're kind of all 3 connected. It's kind of your triangle of exposure. So, you're adjusting your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO. So it's nice just to have those 3 wheels ready to go at any time. Unfortunately, with our 6500, there's only 2 wheels. So we have to press a button and then do the wheel, which in theory doesn't seem like a lot of time. But when you're kind of run and gun, trying to change your exposure quick, that little extra split second you save not pressing a button is a huge deal. So, so that's how we have our wheels set up. And then I'm going to kind of go through the buttons. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Sony has these custom buttons you can kind of set to anything, but then you can actually change every other button too. So if you're this is this is going to magnify, but I don't like that it does that. You could change it to record. The shutter you can even customize to record. So with this one, I have it set to record. So if I hit the shutter while I'm in video mode, it'll start recording, which is nice because otherwise I got to reach for this tiny little button here, which is good so you don't accidentally hit it. But it's just going back to what I was talking about being efficient. It's nice to just be able to quickly press that, and now we're recording. So with the custom button 1, I have my white balance. So with the way I shoot, I'm kind of a stickler on trying to set the white balance as much as possible, especially corporate shoots. Like there's really no reason not to set the white balance because we're usually working with lights that we set up, or we're setting up the subject in a way that we have control over the lighting, so we're going to set our lighting so that way the lighting isn't constantly changing because we're in auto white balance. Now I do break that rule a lot with weddings, so like if we're going from in to out and there's no chance to change it, like I just throw it in auto and just let it do its thing. If you're not familiar with how you can set in Sony cameras, so there's actually a set option just like a normal professional camcorder would have. So if I set, and then if I point at my wife here and her white shirt and try to find a white spot, I can set my white balance, and it usually does a pretty good job. Sometimes I got to do some micro adjustment, but generally it gets me where I want to be. And just having white balance as a shortcut is like so important because we're constantly changing our white balance through a wedding day. So I just like being able to. C2, I have set to my focus spots. So quick detour here. So like I was mentioning with that old camera, autofocus was not very good. And really, until like the A6500, I never touched autofocus for video. I just felt like it was inconsistent. It did that pulsing thing. I was not a fan of it at all. The A6500 changed my mind. When I put that thing on a gimbal and just saw how perfect it was nailing the focus, I just was like, all right, I got to start using this now. So when I got the A7iii, I've been slowly adapting to native Sony glass so I can use all the autofocus features that come with the Sony camera. And I got to say, it does a better job than I do most of the time. Like I think I have it in focus, and then I switch it over to autofocus real quick to double check, and it's like does a slight little change, and it's like way better than what I had. So most of the time I am running in flexible spot. And I just love being able to move my joystick around and like pick the spot I want in focus. And what's great is you can actually make that smaller. So if you're really trying to pinpoint what a subject is, I'll do that, go like this. So it nails it almost like every time. But then if I'm like in an area where like the subject might be moving around a lot, or I'm not sure how much space they're going to take up, then I'll stay in the large side. There's a few more options. The other one that sometimes comes in handy for me is zone. So zone does this giant box, and so like if I am just running around and I don't have time to kind of figure out where the subject's going to be, I'll do this, and almost every time it still nails it. One feature that's really cool too, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show because I'm connected, most of the new Sony cameras now have a touchscreen feature, so I have mine set to do object tracking. So basically, if we pointed right here, I could touch right here, which we can't do because we're connected, but I would touch right there, and it would put the subject in focus and put a little box around them and keep them in focus the whole time. So super helpful. My next button, C3 right here, I have, we can't do it because we're connected. So what this is my monitor brightness. Going back to the wedding stuff, super helpful to be able to adjust the brightness because, I might be inside in a church, the lighting is dark, so I don't need a super bright screen. But then, they're doing a bubble exit and everyone's cheering and we got to run outside into the bright sunlight. So then I'll hit here, and normally what it would do is it'd pop up a little box and I could change to a sunny feature so I could see my screen a little bit better. And I can even adjust my viewfinder too so I can make it brighter if I want. Kind of going along, I have this button right here, AF on, set to my magnified so I can double check my focus, make sure it's good. That one just was kind of common sense to me because it's got the little magnifying glass there, so I figured that makes perfect sense. Right next to it is the AEL button, which I set to switch from manual to autofocus. So what a lot of times I'll do is I'll be in autofocus, I'll set my focus, and then I want to do like a like a reveal shot. So let me find something here. So say like we want to show those umbrellas over there and we want to come from behind here. Well, normally if I was in autofocus, it's going to be focusing on the chair now. So when I come out, those are not going to be in focus. So I'll usually set my focus, press this button, it'll switch it over to manual focus. Then I'll do my slider move or gimbal move or whatever it is. and then that way that object stays in focus and it's not switching focus between the two. Up next, I set some buttons to my, so what's nice is the wheel, there's 4 buttons there and there's a center button. I have my down button set to my audio controls. So sometimes I'll just be running a mic on here just as like a backup. Usually it's not my main mic, usually I'd use like a lav or plug into like a system or something. But if I have a backup one, it gives me the option to be able to control my audio on the fly. I have peaking levels, so if I was in manual focus, I would have the little like yellow dots that tells me if it's in focus or not. So I just have that on there, so if it's like too much yellow and it's like taking over the screen, I can lower it down so that way I can set it to a lower amount. Display button, I just left alone. That just changes all the little features here, so you can kind of see, you know, histogram or your balancer or whatever you want to see. Up next, the trash button, I actually have set to APC or AC. Help me with.
ESC.
There we go. So it crops in. So this camera is a full frame camera, but it also has the feature to crop in. So I could crop in and get a little bit closer to the subject. Even better, I have my middle button set to clear zoom, which I'm in slow-mo, so I'll have to switch over to show that. But basically, what happens is if I press that, I can actually punch in a tiny bit more. So like if I'm just not quite getting the reach I want. All right, so the way I have it set, I have my middle button set to my clear zoom. So let's say, you know, it's a nice shot, but I want to get even closer to that camera. I can zoom in then, and you really don't lose much image quality, especially in 4K. Like I've never noticed a difference. So super helpful if you just need that little bit of extra reach. What's even better is it's really expand the ability I have with the prime. So I have a 55 1.8 on here now. I could turn this into a cropped lens, so like 70, 80-ish equivalent probably.
82.5.
82.5, there we go. Then if I want to go even farther, I just use my clear zoom. And what do you think that would be about?
Well, if you do clear image zoom, what it can do is can double the focal length of the lens. So if we're talking full frame, it becomes a 110 millimeter lens. Now the difference between like clear image zoom and digital zoom is that there are actually textures and patterns that are in the memory banks of the camera. So as you're zooming in, it's actually analyzing and building pixels. So it's not zooming in on the sensor itself, it's actually building pixels, so there's virtually no quality loss. When I first heard of that feature, I thought they were trying to play Willy Wonka and sugarcoat and crap. Nope.
It's a real deal.
Kind of guy. I was like, holy crap, that's amazing.
So the last thing I have set is my FN button. So I've changed some of my default options here. So we're on picture profile right now, so I'll talk about that a little bit, but that's kind of a whole subject in itself. So what I normally do is if it's, say we're doing like a conference or something, and it's just like talking heads, I would not use a picture profile. I probably would just be delivering them something like standard in camera, do a little bit of color correction and call it a day. With our wedding films, we like a flatter profile so we can add our own look to it. So I have kind of taken picture profile 8 and slightly tweaked it to like a Cine 4 style. So it's not S-Log, so it's not like you're looking at a black and white image, but it's still flatter than just shooting the normal in camera, and it gives you that freedom to add a little bit of your own style to it. But what is super helpful is Sony has this gamma display assist. So I'll usually turn one of these on, and I think when I'm in HDMI it doesn't show, so it's not going to change. So just use your imagination that it's getting more saturated. But normally this would be this image, like this is what the flat profile looks like. When I have this assist on, it would just kind of boost the contrast, boost the saturation, and you have a better idea of what your final image might look like instead of just that flat image. And you know, to me, it kind of inspires me more because when I'm looking at a flat image, I'm like, oh man, they're like, what are we shooting today, you know? And then, but by having that color on, I'm like, oh, this is kind of what it's going to look like. And then when I bring it into, you know, the editing software, I can put our look on it, and it looks good, you know. Some of Yeah, correct. So when you record, you're still getting your flat image, but then, you know, it's going to do that. Now, one thing you don't want to forget, what I've done before is I'll be in a picture profile, I'll have my gamma assist on, and then I'll turn the picture profile off and forget about the gamma assist, and it's like, oh, what happened? You know, it's like everything's like overly blown out and saturated. So a few of the other options I have, so I left metering mode in there. I won't go into that too much. One thing I have on here, and this is more for photo, but I mostly just have it in here because I think it's kind of funny that Sony added this. So I can change whether I'm doing eye autofocus for human or for a cat. So Sony added animal eye autofocus. So like it works with like dogs, cats. Does it work with like birds or anything yet?
It's still in its infancy and it's just going to get better. I have been told that if you aim an animal at the dragons on Game of Thrones, it will actually track the dragons.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So again, it's an early concept, or it's an early technology, and there's always going to be something new. But right now, it's focused more on dogs and cats. Other animals, does a decent job, and just just give it time, and it's going to get better, better, and better.
Awesome. And then the last one I'm going to touch on is my zebra level. So I usually do, if I do zebras, I usually do 100 and plus. It's just kind of there as like a reminder. So like, you know, if something is like really blown out, my zebras are going to show up, but generally they don't really show up as much when I'm in that setting. I don't like having zebras on there like constantly, so I've just kind of found that works for me. Just so I have a little reminder like, hey, you need to tone this down a little bit. You're getting a little too overexposed. So that's pretty much all my buttons. The one thing I was going to touch on in photo mode that I have set up as a shortcut when I'm in photo mode is I have the time-lapse feature set to a shortcut. So this has been like a huge help because I always wanted to do time-lapse, but then I'd always like forget my little time-lapse dongle thing, or like there just wasn't time to set up or whatever. So I set one of my shortcut buttons to the time-lapse option. So basically what will happen is when I turn this on, it's going to start doing a time-lapse for me, and it's like built into the camera. And what's cool is like if you don't need the whole like 24 megapixels that this has, you know, you could tone it down and do like a smaller amount, because if it's video, you might not need that much stuff, but you still want to have a little bit of room to work with. So it'll basically take all these photos for you, and then it's built into your camera and it's just ready to go. So it's been super helpful. I've used it like for a few weddings now, and it's nice just having the camera ready to go. And I'm like, oh, hey, I think I'm going to do a time lapse here, and it's just like, it's good to go. I don't need to plug in any extra device. Now, I'm not going to go into the menus too much. We could probably get lost in Sony's menus like for the rest of the night because they have a lot of different things you could change. But the main thing is when we're shooting our weddings, so I used to do everything in 24 unless I needed slow-mo. We've recently switched to doing more 4K 30 for like all our B-roll, and I just like that because it gives me that little bit of wiggle room where I can slow something down. It just looks smoother, and with Premiere, it's so easy to turn that into 24. So like if it ends up just needing to be straight 24, it's not an issue. But anything I know where we want super slow, then that's where we'll resort to just the regular HD and do 60 or 120. So this is really nice. Like I was just making the joke, but kind of being serious. There's a lot of features in like Sony's menu, and there's like, you could spend like 30 minutes like making a video about every single little thing, if not longer. So what's super nice is they have a My Menu option. So I'm still a little bit newer to this one, so I haven't really set this up exactly how I want it, but basically you can throw stuff in there that you use all the time and you don't want to like be like, oh man, where was that at again, and trying to find it. So it's super helpful just to have this here where I can save some of my favorite things and just have them ready to go. Like one of them, for example, that I love having in here is like, you know, the audio signal, you know, like just having that option of like, you know, if I want to, you know, have the option of like hearing the beeping, I can, but most of the time I don't, so it's just easy to turn it on and off. Another one, a little bit more for photo mode that I have in here is live view display. So like if I'm using a flash, it's nice to be able to get to that quickly and just turn it off, so then, you know, it's not trying to show me exactly what is on the screen. But you know, there's a ton of stuff you could add. Another thing that I love with the Sony cameras is they have great connection to like phones and stuff. So what I do a lot of times is if I'm like on a corporate shoot and the client wants to be able to see it, but I don't want them like over my shoulder the whole time, I'll connect it to my iPad, and then I'll give them my iPad, and then they can just watch it there, and they can see what I'm seeing on my screen instead of like them hovering over my screen. And it's nice for setting up the shot. I've had some times where like I've been a one-man band, and it's like I can sit with the tablet in the chair that the speaker is going to be sitting in, look at the shot, and I'm not trying to go back and forth all the time. I can see exactly what it's going to look like without going back around to the camera. It's also cool too because you can also record with the app. So like, you know, you can record, you can change your ISO, you can pretty much change a lot of your settings within the app. So like if you couldn't get to your camera right away, like you have in a balcony or something, you could connect to the app, and as long as it can reach, you could, you know, start and stop or adjust your exposure or whatever you need to do. So that's pretty much.
Video mode as well?
Yep, video mode too. Photo and video mode. So, and I think when you do a photo, it actually saves to your phone right then and there too. So you have it there to show. So, but it's great, especially with clients too. Like whenever they're sitting, we're doing all the lighting and we have it ready to go. A lot of times they want to see what they look like. So instead of like having to take the camera off the tripod and show them or bringing them around and then we lose our position, I just hand them the iPad. I'm like, here you go, this is what you look like. And then they can see exactly how they look. So super helpful. So that's pretty much all for the settings. So what I also have here is one of our wedding films. It's about 6 minutes long, but I cut it down to just a couple minutes, like some of the moments that had a lot of camera changing. And what I did is I put some titles overlay of what camera was being used, what lens, and what frame rate we were in, and what resolution too. So for a wedding day, like when I do corporate stuff, I do a lot of stuff with prime. So like interviews, I'll do like 85 or like a 50 or something like that. But a lot of times a wedding, you don't get the luxury of like having that option. The clear zoom has made it easier, but it's still, it can be a little tricky to like get your shot and be running around and only have one, focal length. So a lot of the day we use a 7200. I'm primarily on that, and then my wife Emily is usually on our gimbal, which is like we usually have an 18-105, or we'll put like a prime like wide lens, and that combo like pretty much nails most of the day. And then as like if we get to the ceremony, we'll do like a 4-camera setup and have like a wider lens, 2 zoom lenses, and then like a floating camera. Same with the reception. But the rest of the day, the prep, the photo session, the dancing, all that can pretty well just be handled with those 2 cameras, one gimbal with a wide angle, and then one monopod camera with a zoom, and there's nothing else we need. And I rarely shoot anything lower than like a 2.8, so like I really don't need like the 85 1.4 for that part of the day, unless I just want to get super artsy or something with the shallow depth of field. So I'll play this right now, so you guys can kind of see the differences and everything, and then we'll wrap up there.
Dylan was a creep. I don't know. He was the creep of the park district. He saw a gymnastics teacher and he was like, just roaming around. Which comes to, he played it off as he was getting lost, but Dylan used to get lost a lot. Any vacation we took, Dylan's lost. That's the big question. Where's Dylan at? But recently, I've noticed he hasn't been getting lost actually at all. I don't know if it's because he's grown up or he's finally found what he's been looking for in Mary. That wasn't it, no. I'm not done yet.
Ready? 2, 1. Oh. I, Dylan Anthony Thompson, take you, Mary Caitlin Hicks, to be my wife.
I, Mary Caitlin Hicks, you, Dylan Anthony Thompson, to be my husband.
To have and to hold from this day forward.
For better or for worse.
For richer or for poor.
In sickness and in health.
To love and to cherish.
Till death do us part.
By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride.
So yeah, so if any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Also, I included my Instagram and my email, so feel free to send me over a message. I think we're going to also post it online, so if you guys want to get a hold of any of this and want to maybe go through it again with your Sony camera and maybe set up some things differently, we'll have the video for you too. So do you guys have any questions? Yeah.
When you're recording in 4K, how much time do you get with such card?
So I usually run 2 128 cards in the A7 because it's got 2 card slots. I started out doing like the 100 megabytes per second and realized it was like overkill. Like it's like literally every gig I mean, every minute is a gig of data, which is not reasonable for a wedding. I'll do it for like corporate stuff if it's more control, like a lot of B-roll. But yeah, I do everything else with the 60 megabytes per second. I have, well, funny you asked that. So I was using Lexar cards a lot, and one of them actually failed me, and I dropped it off here at Helix. So if you guys need card recovery, they do card recovery. But so I'm gonna probably throw those. Well, I'm gonna send them back to Lexar because they're gonna refund me or something, but I'm going to just probably stick with my SanDisk because I haven't had any problems with those in the past. And I don't know the exact model, but I have like one of their faster. What I've actually used a few times too, actually one of these cameras have it in it. I've actually just sometimes bought micro SD cards and used the little adapter. And it's nice because then I have something that's versatile. Like, you know, if I, you know, if say I no longer need that for my DSLR, but now it fits in my drone, you know, and I'll just turn that into my drone card or something. You know, so it's really nice, like having that versatility. So,
to answer your question, for the 128 gig, I use the same camera, and in the shorter, whatever you said, 50 or 60, it's about 4.5 hours.
Okay, thank you.
For the 128. And that's the SanDisk Extreme. It's the new one. That's the 170 read speed. No, they used to, you know, the older one was a 95. So that was like a 95 read and a 80 write, I think is what it was. Now the 170 is 170 read. It's only about 90 write. So there's not a lot of difference with the write. But when you're filling up the card and you want to copy it onto your hard drive to be able to read it at 170 instead of 95, and I think I just got them on sale for like $32 for 128.
Yeah,
and I got the 64s for around $20.
We actually recommend from Sony, we recommend getting a 64 gig card and have it maxed out at the right speed because you want to have like 100 megabits a second or faster for 4K. On the A7iii R3, the UHS you have a UHS 1 card slot and UHS 2. The video it writes at UHS 1, so 100 megabytes or 100 megabytes. So we always recommend that. We also have our own cards too. I heard someone today I was talking to, it's like their cards started to split or they're having contact issues. We have a brand called Tough Cards. It's this one solid piece of plastic. It sounds like a poker chip if you drop it on a hard surface. I kid you not, it's extremely durable. Extremely durable. It's like always work with the ones that work best with you. Any company that has image recovery as part of the program, we do as well. I'm a very big advocate for it because, you know, Val has 3 grandchildren and she can attest that spit happens. It took you guys that long to get that one home.
To kind of give you an idea too, I started with 64s, and I could still usually fit a whole wedding. There were like a few exceptions, like if it's full Catholic mass, and then like the best man wouldn't stop talking, and you know, like then it'll fill up. But you know, we do a lot of like outdoors or like barn and like or industrial, you know, so like it's often the ceremony is like over 30 minutes max, so, and then you know 2 toasts, and then like we're done, and it's just like a lot of B-roll a day. So so I could usually fit everything on a 64, but some of those bigger weddings it would overflow. So
yeah, it's really not worth to try to save the couple dollars.
Yeah,
you know, that way you put the 128 in there and you don't have to worry about it. And if all of a sudden you do a wedding on Friday that's really short, you know, since you have 2 slots, I did it last weekend where I didn't change the second slot. I left the 128 in there because I didn't even use 2 hours. So that left me, you know, a bunch of time. So I changed the A slot and I didn't change the B slot. It still fit in there. So the B slot is more of a, you know, safety kind of thing anyway. So
Will it dual record on both slots?
yeah, so I have mine set to dual record. The other 2 cameras I have don't have 2 card slots, but that one does. So I usually do dual record. You can do where like you fill up 1 card, moves to the next card. You can also even sort it. So like you could do 1 card photos, 1 card video. So if you're doing like hybrid shooting and like, you know, you just need to hand it over the photos to the client, but they don't want to deal with all the video clips. Like, you know, you could do that too and just give them the 1 card. So. This one is way better. So the A7S2, we usually have to, if we do a full Catholic Mass, it could be because my batteries are older too, but we usually have to change the battery before that Mass is over. So that hour isn't like, the battery can't get through it. This one, I usually only end up using like 2 batteries all day. And it's my main camera now. So like it's doing all the prep, it's doing all the ceremony. It's pretty much there for every part of the day. And I just the 2, so.
How's the, in terms of picture quality, is it pretty similar to the A7S2?
I like the colors a little bit better. I don't know if they actually did change the color science or if I just think it looks better for some reason. Or, the A7S2 to the A7 III.
They're always trying to improve upon color science in general, and if you think of the A7S2 versus the 7 III, it's got new processor, new sensor in comparison to the A7S2. But what's nice is that our stuff matches really well, so you can combine other Sony cameras in the footage together to create one nice look. About a year ago, I was talking with a customer, and they were shooting Blackmagic, Canon, and Sony, and they were wondering, I can't get the colors to match. And I looked at them and go, pick one. I prefer me, but pick a camera and stick with it, so the color science is so much easier.
Yeah.
But to question for you, or something potential solution for you, is one of these. It's a battery pack. It's our MPA MQ Z1K. It has 4 Z1. This was actually decked out with 4 Z100 batteries, but it actually comes with 2. Connects into your A7 III. Now connects into your A7S2. So it's a way to shoot non-stop with 8,800 milliamps worth of power. Comes with a plate so you can attach it to your sticks or however else you want to set it up. But yeah, with the A7S2, the batteries that are used are only 1,000 milliamps. So they're not going to last as long as your A7 III batteries. So there's a solution for both if you're shooting a lot of video and you don't have time to be swapping out batteries.
Yeah, that's
and also
good.
one last pinch too is that the cameras that you have, we also have a feature called USB power. So you can plug an external battery pack through the micro USB and the camera recognizes that. Now you still have to have a battery internally to complete the circuit, so it has very minimal draw off the internal, and it will run off the external one. So
yeah, that actually works really well. The conference we had recently, we kept having an issue with the A7S2 because like it just kept dying all the time. So we set it up next to the wall and plugged it in, and like it probably tripled how long it was going to last. But yeah, going back to the picture quality, like to my eyes when I'm like doing the color grading and stuff, it does seem like it's not necessarily sharper or anything, but just the colors seem to just show better. Like usually what happens is when I'm color correcting everything, it seems like the A7S2 is a little bit more green or something, and this doesn't have that. So like usually I have to shift that a little less green, and then they all match together. But I prefer that too because I would rather, this kind of stuff I shoot is usually people based, so like I would rather have less greens, you know, because like green doesn't look good on the skin. So yeah, so and as far as low light, I've had no issues. Like it seems like it's just as good in low light. I don't know if it's as crazy as it, but I never need that. So as far as everything I've had to use low light, it looks just as good at like 3200 as it does at 100. You know, so.
That's the A7
A7 III, yeah. I know like the A7S2 is like the low light king, so I don't know if it's still the low light king, but this does a great job. Yeah. Thank you.